today's topic was suggested to me by Adolphus Green. He wanted me to talk about how music impacts culture and kind of the historical significance of music itself. And I decided to focus on one set of music itself, which is jazz. And the reason why I chose jazz is I kind of feel like jazz has a lot to do with the civil rights movement, because when you look at the history of jazz itself, you see a lot of very prominent African American figures come out of this. And these are the people who became the face of the African American communities in the 1920s and 30s, even though that they were still in segregation. But these were the people who you start to see get accepted by society. You see them in the white speakeasies, and they're playing jazz music. And jazz will then give rise to blues, which will give rise to rock and roll. So if you trace everything back, we have to thank jazz. And when you look at the jazz age and you look at the jazz musicians, you also have something called the Harlem Renaissance come around at this time, which is African American culture being represented by paintings, by books. You have African American authors coming forth, they're being recognized more, but you also have these horrible films like D.W. Griffith's Birth of a Nation, which is all about the founding of the Ku Klux Klan, and you have this horrible tension between whites and blacks. In music, you didn't have that great divide. You had Frank Sinatra traveling around with Sammy Davis Jr., and they didn't see the color lines in music as much. You also have this age coming about where you have women like Billie Holiday, who was an African American woman performing in these white speakeasies where everybody's accepting of her and they like her music and they're promoting her for being a musician, not being an African American. And that's huge when you think about like the civil rights movements and the inclusion of African Americans. You also have Louis Armstrong, who comes out of New Orleans, a deep South city that slavery built. And for him to make his rise in music, for him to become one of the most well-known trumpet players of his age, is absolutely mind-boggling when you think of all the hurdles he had to go through. I mean, he had to ride segregated buses and trolleys, and you have, out in Louisiana itself, you have the court case Plessy v. Ferguson, which sets up separate but equal. And it's incredible to think about how much music actually brought people together and crossed race lines, because people were more accepting of these African Americans during the time because they were talented in music. They had some sort of talent that they enjoyed watching, whether it be at the speakeasies or be at a bar listening to their jazz music. And music does impact our lives every day. Doesn't matter if it's rock and roll, hip hop, rap, it does have a cultural influence, and every single person has their own genre of music that they like. But all music has an overarching message that pretty much unites people. Well, that's all I have for this week. Guys, leave a comment down below what you want me to talk about next week. See you guys next week. Bye!